I watched my fiancée lower her wedding dress into the back of her car, wipe away tears, and tell me, "I don't know who you are anymore." The worst part. She was saying it because of my own brother. I still remember standing alone outside the church, wearing a tuxedo that suddenly felt like a costume for someone else's life. Guests were leaving. My parents refused to look me in the eye. My best man had disappeared. And the woman I loved drove away convinced I'd betrayed her in the worst possible way. It took almost 2 years to prove that I hadn't. My name is Arthur Vale. I'm 45 now, and this happened when I was 32. I've replayed that day in my head more times than I can count, wondering if there was a moment where I could have stopped everything before it unraveled. Looking back, the warning signs had always been there. I just didn't want to believe my own brother would ever become the reason I nearly lost my future. My younger brother, Ryan, had always lived in my shadow, or at least that's how he saw it. We were only 3 years apart, but we couldn't have been more different. I liked routines. He hated rules. I saved money. He spent it before he earned it. Whenever something went wrong in Ryan's life, someone else was always to blame. Usually our parents, sometimes his bosses, occasionally his girlfriends, never Ryan. As kids, those differences didn't seem important. As adults, they became impossible to ignore. Despite everything, I loved him. He was my brother. You don't stop loving family just because they're difficult. At least that's what I believed back then. By the time I met Emily, I'd built a pretty stable life. I worked as a project manager for a construction company outside Denver. Nothing glamorous, just steady work with decent pay. Emily taught 3rd grade at a local elementary school. She had this ability to make every room feel lighter the second she walked into it. The first time we met was embarrassingly ordinary. I spilled coffee on one of her lesson plans at a neighborhood cafe. Instead of getting angry, she laughed and said, "Well, I guess fractions are cancelled today." That was Emily. She found reasons to smile where most people would have found reasons to complain. We dated for 4 years before I proposed. Every person who knew us said we were perfect together. Honestly, I thought so too. Ryan seemed happy for us, at least on the surface. He even hugged me after I proposed. "I'm proud of you, man," he said. Those words meant a lot, because compliments from Ryan were rare. I wish I'd paid more attention to what happened immediately afterward. As everyone celebrated, I noticed Ryan standing alone across the yard. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was staring at Emily. Not in a romantic way. More like someone watching another person walk away with something they believed should have been theirs. When I asked if he was okay, he forced a grin. Yeah, just thinking. About what? How weird it is that little brothers eventually become side characters. I laughed. He didn't. A few weeks later, Emily mentioned something strange. "Ryan asks me a lot of questions when you're not around." "What kind of questions?" "Oh, little things." She shrugged, like whether you're stressed at work, whether we ever argue, whether you've changed since we got engaged. I frowned. That's kind of odd. I figured he was just looking out for you. So did I, at the time. Then came the bachelor party. I'd told everyone I wanted something simple. A steak dinner, maybe a few drinks. Home before midnight. Instead, Ryan insisted he'd planned the perfect surprise. "You only get married once," he kept saying. "Trust me." Against my better judgment, I trusted him. That decision nearly destroyed everything. The night started normally enough. 7 of us met downtown. Dinner was great. Everyone was laughing. Ryan kept ordering rounds of drinks. I slowed down after my second beer. I had no interest in getting wasted. I wanted to remember the night. Ryan didn't like that. "Come on, Arthur," he said loudly. "You've been responsible your whole life. One crazy night won't kill you. I'm good." He leaned closer. "Emily doesn't have to know every little detail." Something about the way he said it bothered me, not because I planned on hiding anything, because he seemed disappointed that I wouldn't. Around 10 o'clock, Ryan announced we were going to one more place. I already paid. "What place?" "You'll see." We ended up outside a nightclub I'd never been to, the kind with flashing lights, expensive cars, and a line stretching around the block. I stopped walking. "No." Ryan turned around. "What do you mean, no?" I said, "Dinner and drinks. This isn't my thing." He laughed. "You're getting married. Live a little." The rest of the guys looked uncomfortable. Finally, my friend Mark said, "If Arthur doesn't want to go, let's head home." Ryan rolled his eyes dramatically. "Seriously?" Then he smiled. That smile still gives me chills. "Fine. We'll do it your way." I thought the argument was over. I had no idea Ryan had already set something else in motion. Something I wouldn't even learn about until my wedding morning, and by then, it was far too late. The morning of my wedding should have been one of the happiest days of my life. Instead, it began with 17 missed calls. I'd left my phone charging overnight, 'cause I wanted one peaceful morning before everything got busy. When I finally looked at the screen, there were calls from my mother, my dad, Ryan, my best man Mark, and even Emily's maid of honor. I figured someone had forgotten flowers or mixed up the schedule. Then Mark called again. I answered with a laugh. "Please don't tell me the cake collapsed." He didn't laugh back. "Arthur, where are you?" "At the hotel." "Stay there." "What?" "Just don't leave your room until I get there." The tone in his voice immediately put my stomach in knots. "Mark, what's going on?" There was a long silence. Finally, he said, "Emily thinks you cheated on her." I honestly thought I'd heard him wrong. "What?" "She has pictures." "What pictures?" "I don't know all the details. Ryan's with her family right now." That made even less sense. "Why is Ryan with Emily?" "I don't know. I'll be there in 10 minutes. "No." His voice became firmer. "If you show up angry, it'll make everything worse." "I didn't do anything." "I know that." "But she doesn't." He hung up. I just stood there staring at the phone. Cheated. Ryan? Nothing fit together. 5 minutes later, there was pounding on my hotel door. Mark walked in looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. He closed the door behind him before speaking. "You need to stay calm." "I'm calm." I wasn't. My hands were shaking. Mark took out his phone. "I need to show you something." He opened a text conversation. The sender's name read, Ryan. He handed me the phone. The first message had been sent at 1:13 a.m. I didn't want Emily to find out like this, but she deserves the truth. Below it were 6 photographs. I felt sick before I even enlarged the first one. There I was, still wearing the same blue shirt from the bachelor dinner, walking into the nightclub Ryan had wanted us to visit. Another picture showed me talking to a blonde woman inside. The third looked worse. The woman had her hand on my shoulder while I was smiling. The fourth showed us leaving through a side entrance. The fifth looked like we were kissing. I stared at it for several seconds. Then I looked closer. "No." Mark nodded. "I know. That's not what it looks like." "I know. I never even kissed her." "I know." I zoomed in. The angle was terrible. The woman's face blocked mine almost completely. If you didn't know the full story, it absolutely looked like we were kissing. But I remembered exactly what had happened. She'd stumbled. She'd been drunk. She'd nearly fallen into me. I caught her before she hit the sidewalk. Someone had snapped the picture at exactly the wrong moment. The last image showed us getting into the same car, except we hadn't. That was the trick. The photo had been taken before I stepped away. The woman climbed into a rideshare. I walked toward my own hotel with Mark. Whoever took the picture stopped shooting before that part. "These are cropped," I said quietly. Mark nodded again. I figured. I never even went into that club. He looked confused. "What?" I walked inside for maybe 2 minutes. Ryan kept insisting. When I realized what kind of place it was, I turned around. The woman bumped into me on the way out. He rubbed his forehead. "So technically, I wasn't there." "Not really," he sighed. "Arthur, Emily doesn't know any of that." I grabbed my jacket. "I'm going to tell her." "You can't." "I have to. Her parents won't let you near her." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. One set of misleading pictures had erased 4 years of trust. Or maybe, no, that wasn't fair. If I'd received pictures like that an hour before my wedding, maybe I'd have panicked too. Maybe I would have believed them. Maybe. What exactly did Ryan tell her? Mark hesitated. "Everything." "What does that mean?" He said he'd been trying to protect her. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. "Protect her? He told her you admitted everything after the bachelor party." "I never admitted anything." "I know." "He said you begged him not to tell anyone." I stared at him. Why would she believe that? Mark looked uncomfortable. "Because Ryan showed her messages." "What messages?" "I don't know." Before I could ask anything else, my phone rang. It was my mother. I answered immediately. "Mom." Her voice sounded exhausted. "Arthur, please tell me this isn't true." I closed my eyes. "You think I cheated too?" "I don't know what to think." "Then ask me." She didn't respond. Instead, she whispered. Ryan sounded so convincing. That sentence hurt more than I expected. Not because my mother doubted me. Because Ryan had somehow convinced everyone before I'd even had the chance to speak. Within a single night, he'd gotten to Emily, my parents, several wedding guests, even Emily's father. He had controlled the story before I even knew one existed. That realization terrified me. Because people usually believe the first version of a story they hear, especially when it's supported by photographs. Then another call came in. "Emily." I answered instantly. "Emily, don't." Her voice cracked. "I gave you every chance to tell me yourself. I don't know what Ryan told you, but I saw the pictures. They don't show what actually happened. They show enough." "No, they don't." She started crying. I asked Ryan if there was any chance he misunderstood. My heart sank. "And?" He said he begged you to stop before things got out of control. I felt physically ill. Every sentence Ryan had supposedly spoken painted him as the protective brother trying to save an innocent woman. He'd turned himself into the hero, and me into the villain. "Emily," I said as calmly as I could, "I have never cheated on you." There was silence. For a brief second, I thought she believed me. Then she asked one question. "If that's true, why would your own brother lie?" I wish I could tell you I had an answer for Emily. I didn't. Because until that moment, I couldn't imagine a reason big enough for my own brother to destroy my wedding. "Emily," I said carefully, "I don't know why Ryan is saying these things, but I swear to you none of it is true." She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded defeated. "I want to believe you, then believe me. I don't know how." That hurt more than anything else she'd said, not because she doubted me, because I could hear how badly she wanted a reason not to. "I need proof," she whispered. "I'll get it. I don't know if you can." The call ended. I stood there staring at my phone, feeling completely helpless. How do you prove something that didn't happen? You can prove guilt. You can prove innocence in court sometimes. But proving that you didn't kiss someone in a blurry photograph, that felt impossible. Mark was already thinking ahead. We need to figure out where those pictures came from. I nodded. They weren't random. Exactly. Somebody followed us. That realization hit me like a truck. Those photos weren't taken by a stranger. Whoever took them knew exactly where we'd be. They knew when to stop shooting. They knew which moments would look suspicious. This wasn't luck. It was planned. Mark looked at me. Who knew where we were going? I answered immediately, Ryan. And no one. He nodded slowly. There you go. For the first time that morning, I felt something stronger than confusion. Suspicion. We drove back downtown instead of heading to the church. The nightclub was closed, but a janitor was cleaning the sidewalk. I asked if there were security cameras outside. He pointed toward the building. Owner handles all that. When will he be here? Probably around noon. It was only 8:30. Waiting wasn't an option. Guests were already arriving at the church. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Some people were asking where I was. Others weren't asking anything. They'd already decided. Then my father called. This time I answered on speaker so Mark could hear. Arthur, Dad, I need the truth. I've been telling everyone the truth. No. His voice was unusually firm. I need the whole truth. There isn't another version. Ryan showed us text messages. What messages? He said you confessed after the bachelor party. I never confessed to anything. He has screenshots. I looked at Mark. His expression changed immediately. Fake, he mouthed. Dad, I said, send them to me. There was a pause. Then I received 3 images. I opened the first one. At first glance, it looked like a normal text conversation between Ryan and me. My contact photo, my name, blue and grey message bubbles. Then I started reading. Ryan, are you seriously going through with the wedding after tonight? Me, Emily can never find out. The next screenshot read, Ryan, tell her yourself. Self. Me. It'll destroy her. The third one was even worse. Ryan, I'll keep your secret if you promise it never happens again. Me. Thank you. I almost laughed. Not because they were funny, because they were terrible. They're fake. Mark grabbed the phone. Yeah. Look. He zoomed in. The font spacing is off. So are the timestamps. I hadn't even noticed. Then something else jumped out. The battery icon. Ryan had an Android phone. Those screenshots were from an iPhone. He'd forgotten one simple detail. I immediately called my dad back. Dad, they're fake. Arthur, no. Listen, Ryan has never owned an iPhone. Silence. Then my father quietly said, You're right. That was the first crack. A small one. But it was enough. Send them to someone who understands digital editing. I will. Don't tell Ryan. Why? Because if he made these, he'll start covering his tracks. Dad didn't answer, but I knew he understood. About 20 minutes later, I got another unexpected call. It was Ryan. I let it ring twice before answering. Where are you? He asked. Driving. The wedding starts in 40 minutes. I know. Emily's waiting. I thought she cancelled it. He hesitated. She hasn't decided yet. Interesting. So there's still a chance. If you admit what happened. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ryan. What? Why are you doing this? A long silence followed. Then he chuckled. Not loudly. Just enough to make my skin crawl. You always did think life was about honesty. What does that mean? It means people don't believe facts. They believe confidence. I frowned. I frowned. What are you talking about? You'll figure it out. Click. He hung up. Mark looked at me. What was that? I don't know. But deep down, I had a feeling this wasn't about one lie. This had been building for years. We just hadn't seen it. Around 11 o'clock, my mother called again. This time she sounded completely different. Arthur, what happened? I found something. What? What? I was helping clean up Ryan's apartment last month. Okay. I accidentally packed one of his external hard drives into a box in our garage. I frowned. So? I remembered it because he got angry when he couldn't find it. My heartbeat quickened. Mom, I plugged it into your father's computer. And? There are folders. What kind of folders? She hesitated, then said the words that changed everything. Arthur. There's a folder with Emily's name on it. I nearly ran a red light. Mark grabbed the dashboard. Arthur. I slammed on the brakes, took a deep breath, and pulled into an empty parking lot. Drive, Mark said. I'll drive. I didn't argue. 5 minutes later, we were in my parents' garage. My mother was standing by the side door, arms folded tightly across her chest. I'd never seen her look so shaken. I didn't open much, she said as we walked inside. It didn't feel right. Dad already sitting at his computer. The external hard drive was plugged in. On the screen were dozens of folders. Some had ordinary names, taxes, photos, work. Then there were others. Emily, Arthurding, evidence. I felt my stomach drop. Dad clicked the folder labeled Emily. Inside were screenshots of her public social media posts dating back nearly 3 years. Photos she'd uploaded. Pictures friends had tagged her in. Even images she'd deleted long ago. How is that possible? I asked. Mark leaned closer. He must have saved them before she deleted them. There were also text files. One was titled likes. Another was dislikes. Another simply said things she doesn't know. Mom looked away. This isn't normal. No, it wasn't. Dad opened the first document. It read like someone's private research notes. Emily's favorite restaurant, her favorite flowers, the names of her college roommates, the date her grandfather passed away, books she'd mentioned wanting to read, movies she cried during. It was page after page of details, none of them dangerous on their own. Together, though, it felt obsessive. Then Dad opened another file. This one was called Conversations. Inside were transcripts, not real text messages, predictions. Ryan had written imaginary conversations between himself and Emily. In one version, she thanked him for always being honest. In another, she admitted she'd chosen the wrong brother. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Mark quietly muttered, "He's been rehearsing this." My father sat back in his chair. I think he stopped, then started again. I think Ryan convinced himself this would eventually happen. No one spoke, because it made a disturbing amount of sense. This wasn't a last-minute attempt to ruin my wedding. This had been building in his mind for years. Then Mom clicked on the folder named Wedding. Inside were spreadsheets, guest lists, seating charts, vendor information, schedules. He had copies of documents that only Emily and I had shared with immediate family. He knew exactly where everyone would be, exactly when, exactly how to reach them. He planned this, I whispered. Mark nodded. Down to the minute. Then we found the folder named Evidence. Inside were dozens of image files. Some were untouched. Others had names ending in edit. Dad opened one. It was the photo of me outside the nightclub. The original version showed 3 people. Me, the drunk woman, and Mark standing less than 2 feet away. The edited version cropped Mark completely out. Another file showed me catching the woman as she stumbled. The original clearly showed her losing her balance. The edited version was frozen a fraction of a second later, making it look intimate. Then we found the last sequence. 3 consecutive photos. Frame 1. The woman falling. I steady her. Frame 3. Frame 3. I step backward while she regains her balance. Ryan had only sent Emily frame 2. I just stared at the screen. Everything she'd seen had technically happened. It had simply been stripped of every piece of context that explained it. Can we prove these were edited? I asked. Dad nodded slowly. The original files are still here. Mark looked at the metadata. They were modified at 2:41 this morning. The wedding was scheduled for 1 o'clock. Ryan had spent the night preparing this. My phone buzzed again. Emily. I answered immediately. Arthur. She sounded exhausted. I need to ask you something. Anything. Were you really at that nightclub? Finally, a question instead of an accusation. Yes. For about 2 minutes. I walked in. I realized what kind of place it was. I turned around and left. She was quiet. Ryan told me you stayed until almost 3. No. I was back at my hotel before midnight. There was another pause. Then she asked, "Can you prove it?" I looked at Mark. He smiled. "I think we can. Hotels have security cameras, key card logs, electronic records, things people forget about when they build lies. I'll get everything." I told her. "I don't care how long it takes." She sighed. "The ceremony's been delayed." What? My dad refused to cancel until everyone heard both sides. I almost couldn't believe it. What changed his mind? She hesitated. "Your father called him, and he said Ryan's story isn't adding up." For the first time all day, I felt hope. Real hope. Then another thought hit me. If Ryan knows people are starting to doubt him, Mark finished my sentence. He may try to destroy the evidence. At that exact moment, my father looked toward the garage window. "Where's Ryan's car?" Mom frowned. I thought it was outside. It wasn't. Dad's face turned pale. "He knows." "What?" "He knows we found the hard drive." "How?" Dad pointed toward the security camera mounted above the garage door. It had been installed after a string of neighborhood break-ins. Its notification light was blinking. Ryan still had access to the family security app. He'd probably received an alert the moment we walked into the garage. He knew exactly where we were. And if he knew we had the originals, there was only one place he'd go next: the church, where nearly 200 people were still waiting, including Emily, and none of us knew what he was planning to say next. By the time we got back to the church, the parking lot was still full. That surprised me. I had expected everyone to leave hours earlier. Instead, people were standing outside in small groups, quietly talking. Nobody was laughing anymore. It felt less like a wedding and more like a town waiting for a verdict. As soon as Emily's father saw my dad pull into the lot, he walked over. He was a big man who rarely showed emotion. That day, he looked exhausted. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse me. He simply asked, "Do you have something that changes this?" My father answered before I could. "Yes, we have the original files." Emily's father looked from him to me. "Can you prove they're original?" Mark stepped forward. "I can prove they're earlier versions than the ones Ryan sent." He held up the hard drive. The timestamps match. The metadata matches. The edits were made just a few hours ago. Emily's father nodded once. Then he opened the church doors. "Come inside." Nearly every guest turned to look at us. The room fell completely silent. Emily was standing near the front, still wearing her wedding dress. I'd never seen someone look so relieved and so heartbroken at the same time. Ryan was beside her. The moment he saw the hard drive in Mark's hand, the color drained from his face. It lasted less than a second. Then he smiled. The same confident smile I'd seen the night before. He still thought he could talk his way out of this. Emily looked at me. I'm listening. Those two words meant everything. Not forgiveness, not trust, just a chance to be heard. I took a slow breath. I never cheated on you, Ryan laughed quietly. Arthur, no. I looked directly at him. This time you don't get to interrupt. Mark connected the hard drive to the church's projector laptop. Within seconds, the first image appeared on the screen. The edited version, then the original. People began whispering. Next came the second. Edited, original. Again. And again. Each original image restored the missing context. Every cropped frame suddenly made sense. Emily covered her mouth. Ryan folded his arms. Anyone can fake metadata, Dad calmly answered. That's why we brought the originals. Mark opened the file information. Creation dates, modification dates, everything lined up. Ryan shrugged. So he still went inside the club. I did, I said. For 2 minutes. I left. You told everyone I stayed for hours. Ryan didn't answer. Mark switched to the hotel records. I'd asked the hotel manager to email them while we were driving. My room key had been used at 11:47 p.m. Security footage showed me entering the lobby less than 5 minutes earlier. The timestamp couldn't be argued with. Emily stared at the screen, then at Ryan. You told me he didn't come back until after 3. Ryan forced a laugh. Maybe I remembered wrong. I stepped closer. No, you didn't. You invented it. The room was completely silent. Then Dad handed Emily his phone. The text messages. She opened them, then looked at another screen where Mark had enlarged the screenshots. The battery icon, he explained. These screenshots came from an iPhone. He looked directly at Ryan. You've owned Android phones for over 10 years. Ryan's expression finally changed, just a little. Enough to know he understood. The lie was collapsing. Emily looked at him. Did you make these? He hesitated, only for a second. Then he shook his head. No. So where did they come from? He stopped. For the first time in my life, Ryan had run out of words. My mother quietly walked toward him. She wasn't angry. She looked devastated. Ryan. She held up a printed page from the hard drive. It was one of the imaginary conversations he'd written years earlier, the one where Emily supposedly admitted she'd chosen the wrong brother. My mother's hands were trembling. What is this? Ryan stared at the paper. Nobody spoke. Finally, he sighed, not dramatically, almost with relief. I loved her. Emily looked stunned. Ryan continued without looking at anyone. I loved her before Arthur even knew her. I frowned. What are you talking about? I met her first. The room stayed silent. I saw her at a bookstore years ago. I never spoke to her. He laughed bitterly. I imagined what would have happened if I had. Emily looked confused. I've never seen you before Arthur introduced us. I know. He nodded. You never noticed me. Then everything clicked. The folders, the notes, the imaginary conversations, the years of collecting details. None of it had started after our engagement. It had started before Emily and I had even met. Ryan had created a fantasy life in his head. When I unknowingly fell in love with the same woman, he convinced himself I'd stolen the future he believed should have been his. He looked at me. You always got everything. Our parents trusted you. You had the better job, the better house. And then he glanced at Emily. You got the one person I wanted. I shook my head. You never even knew her. I could have. No, you chose not to. His shoulders slumped. For the first time that day, he looked less like a mastermind and more like a man whose jealousy had finally consumed every part of his life. Emily quietly removed her engagement ring. My heart stopped. She walked toward me. I honestly didn't know what she was about to do. Then she took my hand, placed the ring back into it, and whispered, "I owe you the biggest apology of my life." For a moment, nobody in the church moved. Emily was still holding my hand. I looked down at the engagement ring resting in my palm and realized she hadn't given it back to end our relationship. She'd given it back because she wanted to put it on herself. She smiled through tears. I want to do this the right way. I slipped the ring back onto her finger. Neither of us said another word. We just stood there, trying to process everything that had happened over the past several hours. Behind us, I heard someone quietly sobbing. It was my mother. She walked over to Ryan. "I love you," she said. "Nothing will ever change that." Ryan didn't respond. "But I can't defend what you've done." He stared at the floor. My father stepped beside her. "You didn't just try to ruin Arthur's wedding." He paused. "You manipulated an entire family." Ryan finally looked up. "I know." His voice was flat. No excuses, no anger, just exhaustion. I kept telling myself I was exposing the truth. He swallowed hard. Eventually, I stopped noticing that I'd become the one creating the lies. No one answered, because there wasn't anything left to say. Emily's father broke the silence. He looked at the guests. "I think everyone here has witnessed enough for one lifetime." A few people nodded. Some quietly left the church to give us privacy. Others stayed, not because they wanted drama, because they'd come to celebrate a marriage, and somehow they still hoped that could happen. Emily turned to me. "Do you still want to marry me today?" I laughed softly. "Is that even a real question?" She smiled for the first time all day. "I guess not." Our officiant, who had spent most of the afternoon wondering whether there would even be a ceremony, stepped forward. He looked at both of us. "We don't have to do this today." He wasn't pressuring us. He was giving us an easy way out. Emily squeezed my hand. "If we leave today, this lie becomes the thing we remember every anniversary." She looked into my eyes. "I don't want to remember the lie. I want to remember that the truth won." I nodded. "So do I." About half the guests had already gone home. Honestly, I didn't blame them. The reception schedule was completely ruined. The caterers had rearranged everything twice. The photographer had spent most of the day documenting worried faces instead of happy ones. None of it mattered anymore. The people who stayed were the ones who truly cared about us. The ceremony itself lasted less than 20 minutes. No elaborate speeches. No dramatic music. Just two people making promises after surviving the hardest day of their relationship. When the officiant finally said, "You may kiss the bride," the entire church erupted into applause. Not because it was a perfect wedding, because everyone understood how close it had come to never happening. The reception turned out to be strangely beautiful. People laughed again. Kids ran around the dance floor. Someone joked that we should celebrate 2 anniversaries, our wedding and the day we survived it. For the first time in hours, life felt normal. Ryan wasn't there. After admitting what he'd done, he quietly left before the ceremony began. None of us stopped him. A few days later, he sent me a letter. Not a text, not an email, an actual handwritten letter. He apologized, not just for the wedding, for years of resentment. for comparing our lives instead of building his own, for convincing himself that my happiness had somehow stolen his. He also admitted something that stayed with me. He wrote, "The lie became easier to believe because I repeated it to myself for so long. I appreciated the apology. But forgiveness isn't the same thing as trust. I forgave Ryan, eventually. That was for my own peace. Trust, though, had to be earned again, and that took much longer. For nearly 3 years, we barely spoke. Family holidays were awkward. Birthdays were complicated. There were plenty of conversations with therapists, long walks, uncomfortable dinners, and more honesty than our family had ever practiced before. Slowly, things improved. Not because everyone forgot, because everyone finally stopped pretending difficult conversations could be avoided forever. Ryan started seeing a counselor. He changed jobs, moved to another state, built a quieter life. From what I hear, he's doing well now. We exchange messages a few times a year. They're simple. Happy birthday, Merry Christmas, congratulations when something good happens. Our relationship will never be what it once was. But maybe that's okay. Sometimes rebuilding doesn't mean recreating the past. It means building something healthier than what existed before. As for Emily and me, this year we celebrated our 12th wedding anniversary. We still laugh about little things. She still teaches 3rd grade. I still spill coffee more often than any grown man should. And every now and then, one of us will look at the other and jokingly say, "Got any fake screenshots today?" It never fails to make us laugh. People often ask whether I regret not cancelling the wedding after everything that happened. The answer is no. If we'd walked away that day, Ryan's lie would have become the ending to our story. Instead, it became the chapter that proved our relationship could survive something neither of us ever imagined. The biggest lesson I learned wasn't about jealousy, or manipulation, or even betrayal. It was this: trust isn't tested when life is easy. It's tested when the truth becomes difficult to recognize. And real love isn't about never doubting. It's about being willing to keep searching until the truth finally comes into the light. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to one of the hardest stories I've ever told. I wish it had never happened, but if sharing it reminds even one person to ask questions before believing the first version of a story they hear, then maybe something good came from the worst day of my life.